This is going to be a different type of review for this channel. I've had many thoughts on the current state of Halo since playing Halo 5's disaster of a campaign, and many discussions in how Halo could improve in the future with others in the Halo community. While I could go on and on that front, I'm trying not to discuss the future that much in this review in regards to Halo Infinite. I'm going to focus mainly on the Halo franchise going up to 2012 to 2015, which is the in-between years of 4 and 5, the story, its massive flaws, and discussing just how in this one game Halo was nearly killed in every aspect. Its appalling character writing, destruction of 2 legacy characters, the raping of the lore, and overall wasted potential resulted in one of the worst narratives ever produced by man. I feel as a Halo fan that despite this game coming out 5 years ago, I still need to thoroughly criticize this as much as I can, especially now that Infinite is on the horizon. Hope you guys stick with me here and enjoy. Have a good watch.
Where's Cortana? She's gone, sir.
Welcome home, John.
Cortana!
Halo Combat Evolved was a game that was a surprise success for Microsoft and the developer Bungie. Not only did the game help define the console FPS for nearly a decade, it created one of the biggest video game franchises in the history of gaming, and cemented Microsoft's place in the console market. Every year after 2001 contained endless excitement for a new Halo title, and Bungie and Microsoft worked to bring the people what they wanted on the Xbox and the Xbox 360. That was until about 2008-2009, when Halo 3 ODST and Halo Wars came out. While ODST was still a successful game in terms of sales and reviews, some fans were kind of irked about the $60 price tag for a spin-off game, and even while offering a unique gameplay experience, wasn't exactly up to par with something like Halo 3 in terms of a full game. It might have been the first Halo title to be viewed as somewhat divisive, but not in the way that the other games in the series happened to be, like Halo 4 and Reach happened years later. Combine that with the controversial development of Halo Wars, a project almost everyone at Bungie except Marty O'Donnell completely disavowed, and the mixed reception initially of the last game in the Halo franchise they developed in Halo Reach, Halo was starting to slip up in the mind of the general public and Halo fans. It became a franchise that was considered once great, but was slipping into decline as many before it had. Reach marked the last game that they would ever develop for Halo, as Bungie wanted to work on something new, which later turned out to be Destiny. Destiny. Bungie wanted out of Microsoft's deal as early as the completion of Halo 3, but because Microsoft wanted to retain control of the Halo IP, Bungie and Microsoft compromised so that way Bungie could work on 2 more games before leaving. Bungie still cared for Halo, as Reach had the largest progression in its art style, soundtrack, customization, and presentation. It was a complete overhaul of Halo, but something was missing from Reach. While ODST is still viewed as the better game in most people's eyes for mixing up the traditional Halo formula and not being in the perspective of a Spartan but a human soldier as an ODST, Reach took massive liberties with the gameplay formula. The more controversial was the liberties taken with the story of the event that caused Combat Evolved to happen in the first place. The destruction of the lore was something many fans have not forgiven, and even as Reach's reception has brightened in the last 10 years since its release, the game as a whole still isn't up to par with Halo's standards. But we can say confidently right now, it still wasn't as disastrous as many of the blundering attempts at soft reboots in film in the last 10 years. Looking at you, Star Wars. While ODST and Reach were being developed, Microsoft was looking for a new developer to take the mantle of the Halo franchise. But instead of contracting an existing studio to work on the game, they decided to do what a struggling sports franchise with tons of money tends to do in this situation: throw money around to strip talent from other areas. Microsoft went across the gaming industry to bring people to the new studio, 343 Industries, that would start the development of a new Halo game as soon as Bungie finished developing Reach. They even got some people from Bungie like Frank O'Connor to come in. In the meantime, they created an animatrix-style movie for Halo called Halo Legends, which is alright for the most part. It has some good, insightful lore for the Arbiter and a couple really good short stories in it, but not really much else of substance. And it is kind of cringy, especially when you look at it from a lore perspective. But it is a fuck ton better than the Animatrix, I can promise you that. After Bungie left, 343 had a lot of work to do. But instead of developing a game for the standard development time for a Halo game, which was 3 years, it was going to be a measly 2 in order to presumably save resources in preparation for the Xbox One's launch, which would come out a year after Halo 4's completion. Using the same engine as Reach, the team, which was filled with people who had no experience developing Halo games, and some didn't even play them, as many did not know who the Master Chief even was, it was a pretty taxing development cycle. While some people blame 343 for this, it isn't as simple as some people have made it out to be. I love the word of Wolf, Dishonored Wolf, legend. But him and a lot of other Halo fans' hatred towards 343 was kind of misguided in terms of the developer, when you should be going after the executives at the top for how they really ruined things, because they are the reason that things kind of took a downhill slump for Halo. It was a blunder by those at the top. What many haven't talked about is that 343 is a corporate venture of Microsoft. The suits make the big decisions for Halo's future, and they have been since Bungie left. They didn't give Halo 4's team the time that they needed to make a game of that scale, and that is why a lot of compromises were made that strayed from the Halo formula, and why a lot of people pointed out, rightfully so, that Halo 4 felt more like Call of Duty than Halo. It sucks, but that's what happened. Just look at how Disney has treated Star Wars since George Lucas sold it to him, for example. They promised him his trilogy would be made, then they stabbed him in the back, and utterly destroyed his vision and made Star Wars never even be the box office draw it ever used to be. And it's divided the fan base nearly irreparably. Halo has gone through much the same problem, but thankfully it isn't as bad as that, as at least more people have been able to play and enjoy the games than they have been to watch Star Wars and enjoy the sequel trilogy, or anything having to do with Disney Star Wars at all. But most people do agree that under Microsoft's sole tenure, Halo has suffered. Now, Halo 4 is a fascinating topic to me. It's one of the many things people will point to when discussing how Halo's exactly declined. It's definitely a controversial and divisive game amongst the Halo community. From the multiplayer, to the tweaks to the gameplay formula that progressed on Reach's tweaks, the story and the possible franchise fatigue, Halo 4 is still a wildly debated game on its merits. And British Potato, if you're watching this, you'll probably kill me for saying this. But personally, as someone who grew up without internet access and grew more accustomed to Halo's story, I liked Halo 4 for what it was. It is not perfect by any means necessary, but it followed that's set up by Bungie at the end of Halo 3. It developed the Master Chief and Cortana's relationship in a way that was really only shown in the books, and also putting them in a strenuous situation, and it incorporated the Forerunners more into this story and signaling humanity's role in the galaxy as being something bigger as it was foreshadowed in the other games previously. The Master Chief and Cortana side plot was one that particularly hit home with me, as Chief became more of a defined character instead of his normal stoic self, and Cortana became much more human and flawed, especially considering the context of her going through rampancy. Her death in Halo 4 was well earned and built up in a way that respected her character, sacrificing herself to save John after he nukes the Didact's ship to save the Earth. With the lackluster deaths of many characters in other works, Cortana died while doing what was consistent with her character, and not being killed off in a silly as fuck Luke Skywalker method that literally breaks the character in fucking half, or doing what The Legend of Korra did in Book 2 and literally killing off the entirety of the Avatar line for no reason. Chief was left to ponder himself as something more than just a soldier to protect humanity, and not being a machine, but a human. This was a very nuanced way in my eyes to make Chief distinct in the 343 games compared to Bungie's, as their character development wasn't really well done or wasn't done at all, and shaping him in a way that not many FPSs have really done before. Combined with how they were bringing in more of his book attributes to the forefront and the potential for a great sequel of him dealing with the loss of his best friend and the loss of most of his Spartan 2 comrades and dealing with just how much he has had to go through during the course of not only the Human Covenant War, but the events of Halo 4. We had the inklings of a great character drama for him. Forward Unto Dawn, the movie, was a great way to give Commander Lasky more time to flesh him out in regards to how we got to see a different side of the Chief. Unfortunately, the guy who wrote Halo 4's story was gone after the game wrapped up, and the control of the story went to a new guy, Brian Reed. That name will become as uttered on this channel in infamy than Rooster Teeth is. He wrote a couple of comics dealing with the aftermath of the Didact's attack on Earth and Cortana's death, but more well known is that he and his team were responsible for Spartan Ops, the game mode that continued the story of the Infinity and Record. Spartan Ops is... it's weird. It has some redeemable qualities in terms of its story, and it definitely has some mystery going for it. And you have some decent characters in Jewel and Donna and a couple of others, but gameplay-wise, it's basically a poor man's version of Firefight for Halo 4. That, and I couldn't really experience it on release because they didn't release them all at once, and you couldn't get the cutscenes for them on MCC unless you're online, and I have to have the Halo Channel 2. You can't watch the cutscenes or do anything with Halo 4's terminals without having internet connection. That's some retarded ass shit there, 343. Come on, man. So in between Halo 4 and 5, Reed went to work writing the story, and the PR team went to work promoting it. They promised something new, something daring. Chief has gone AWOL and is being hunted by a new Spartan. They have snapped after losing Cortana, abandoning his duty and his morality. The Hunt the Truth adverts portrayed the side of a Chief that wasn't really ever shown before, and started to make you think, oh, maybe the Chief has gone crazy. And the reveal of the Guardian suggested there was more for the Chief in store for this narrative and the Forerunners for shaping humanity's role in the galaxy and taking up the mantle of responsibility. And the new Spartan, Locke, even got himself a movie in Halo Nightfall that would help explain his actions in Halo 5. Everyone and their mother was hyped for this game. But it all turned out to be smoke and mirrors. But how, you say? How the hell did a game that looked to promise such an interesting and unique tale to the Halo universe crash and burn in such a spectacular fashion? Well, in my review, that's what I intend to show to you all as I break down the story in every conceivable angle and help explain to people why you don't let people Rian Johnson and break a story in half because they have a shit vision for how good a story should be. So, let's get in our drop pods and delve deep into Halo 5's campaign. God help my sanity, and all of you guys watching. I'm sorry if I break your brains. The first red flags for this game comes in how it presents information to the player. In each introduction for the Halo games, you weren't given a ton of exposition for the situation at hand, but you got enough to know the stakes. Not only that, it usually came after another event. For example, in Halo 3, you start off in the direct aftermath of Halo 2 and landing back on Earth, and are immediately back into the fight. It isn't until the second mission that you as the player are given the rundown on what the Ark exactly is, and that the Prophet of Truth is looking for it. It's minimal information, but it laid the groundwork for the story to unfold. Or how about Halo Combat Evolved? Keyes and Cortana talk about the battle for Reach, and despite not knowing anything about the conflict as a player on the first playthrough, we know that they are on the run and are desperate to keep themselves alive. And your first task isn't even given to you until you're getting out of your cryopod and you start off with no ammunition or weapons, and you must get to the keys despite that. So you're also showed firsthand how vicious the Covenant are when you see them mercilessly kill one of the cryo operators after getting your bearings, showing you they don't care what human they run into, they will kill them all. And you're explaining how dire the consequences are if you are killed and Cortana is taken, and even some military regulation in regards to the Cole Protocol. Halo Reach's intro wasn't even very exposition heavy, as it follows the same tact of limited but straightforward information. Insurrection is a problem that exists for the UNSC, and the threat of the Covenant attacking is always looming. And you're introduced to new Spartans that are gruff and rough, except for Carter, and a CO that is willing to use the Spartans despite it being frowned upon for them not to be used in any situation that doesn't involve the Covenant. All of these openings lay the groundwork for the story and how it progresses. The more you play the campaign, the more you realize what is going on and piece together all the little details. Halo 5 follows the same path in terms of progression, but not in how it presents information. You're told by Palmer and Lasky that 5 whole colonies have been destroyed by something Forerunner in the last 3 days, and that Halsey has information that explains it. So you and your squad, Osiris, must snatch her from Jewel and Dama, the leader of the new Covenant, and extract her to Infinity. Now, considering Osiris is working on the Infinity, you'd think they would all know about the disappearances of the colonies prior to this, and that they wouldn't need to discuss this part at all in the briefing, except to say, oh, Dr. Halsey knows what's going on, and this is why you're going to take her. It would save some time for the intro instead of going, oh, hey, didn't you know that there's a bunch of colonies that disappeared? Instead, have them discuss while on the ground how colonies have been disappearing so quickly, and it freaks them out a bit that they haven't gotten any explanations. It sets the state. It's like like how they talk about random things on the ground during the missions anyway. It sets the stakes more effectively that Halsey needs to be found and extracted. Not only that, there's an entire battle between the Forerunners and Jewel and Dama's forces when Osiris enters combat that isn't discussed at all during the briefing. But yet in the game, as you play, they discussed how Jewel's support has been slipping in the Covenant thanks to the Prometheans fighting them. So why add one piece of info then leave another one out? Why not leave both of them out? Or put the Promethean briefing into there and tell them they're entering a hot zone and time is of the essence, and have Osiris discuss why the Prometheans were fighting Jewel all of a sudden. And since the Infinity is here in orbit, had them contact Infinity Ops, kind of like Overlord for Modern Warfare 1 to 3, giving orders and helping you get through situations. You could even put Veronica Dare in there, and that would actually help. Any of these would lead to pretty good foreshadowing to what would happen later in the story when we see what's exactly causing the disappearances, and it would entice most of us playing to trying to figure out what is going on. I feel that with this opening and the stream of information that comes after it, the story wasn't doing a very good job of setting itself up. Feels kind of like a lot in TLJ in that sense, where you start off, even though we're in the direct aftermath of the First Order losing their Super Death Star and countless men, they still have all of these people here to take over the galaxy. Yeah, like that makes sense. How the heck are they going to overrun all the major systems when they just lost their big Super Death Star? That's absolutely freaking ridiculous. I don't see how that would work. Now that we're off that point, let's go to the squad we play as. Fireteam Osiris. Fireteam Osiris is made up of Spartan Jameson Locke, a former Oni assassin, Spartan Edward Buck, a former ODST and 25-year veteran of the Human Covenant War, Olympia Vale, a UNSC Naval Intelligence officer and expert on the elites, and Holly Tanaka, engineer and survivor of the glassing of a planet near the end of the Human Covenant War. These 4 Spartans are who we will be following throughout the course of the campaign. And I'm going to have to say this right now. The first mission doesn't do the best it could in trying to endear me to them right off the bat, even though with 2 of the characters, at least you have some bases to get attached to from past events in the Halo series. Buck is obviously the more familiar character out of all of them to Halo fans right out of the bat, because he was a playable and central character to the events of ODST. Nathan Fillion, even when he isn't given much in terms of material, always puts up a great performance, so obviously he gets a pass out of the cast of characters. He's used more as comedic relief in Halo 5, but like with Malcolm Reynolds and Firefly, he is actually a wise and knowledgeable character that has gone through many a conflict. Even when his character is put in stupid situations, he handles most of them like you would think Buck would. But We can get to the stupid tisms later. Locke, if you watch Nightfall, was shown as a man who was, while caring for the men under his command, was aggressive and willing to do anything he could to get the job done, even sacrificing his own life. Remember in Nightfall, despite the fact that the planet that they were on was not UNSC, and he was still trying to help the civilians, he was kind of an asshole to the people of the military on that planet. He was a jerk. Now, but he also displayed an attribute that was key to a Spartan: keeping yourself alive and level-headed in a stressful situation, as he survived the event on that destroyed Halo ring. These two characters are the backbone of Osiris, and given Locke's former role as an assassin, would be the perfect lead for the Spartan 3 strike team for situations that need to be resolved quickly and efficiently. It's a good setup for him, but then we have two other characters on the team we know nothing about and have never been introduced to until the start of this game in Valen Tanaka. I know a character from Spartan Ops, Thorn, was actually supposed to be in this fire team, but they took him out and replaced him with Buck, which was a good choice, but they probably should have kept him in and replaced Vale or Tanaka with him, since he had more to do with Jewel and Dama than any of these other characters that we'll be playing as or be with in the game. And it's just another problem with this game, is that it pulls a Season 8 of Game of Thrones and just forgets about plot points from other games. We'll get to that. Anyway, in this intro, after the briefing, Vale only talks after Locke asks about the tracking gear coming online, confirming that it works. Tanaka gives off a line asking if anybody wanted to say anything before the mission started, which is weird. Why would you be asking anyone to say anything? You're about to start a mission where time is of the essence. You should be getting ready like in every other war movie or TV show or game, and getting psyched, as BJ Blazkowicz would tell you. Mind you, this isn't them going into a D-Day-like scenario or storming a random place in St. Helios like they do later in the game, where it would actually be more appropriate for them to do something like that. This is supposed to be an easy and quick mission, but I digress. Buck responds with a line that I rather like: "If God can hear how scared I am, so can everyone else." It kind of shows a key part of soldiers, or at least stereotypically. Buck's seen some shit. He lets it known that he is scared, even though he doesn't really show it in terms of how he acts. You can just feel that he's, scared. And he also, do another trope. Buck is, he believes in God, and that's a big thing with soldiers, at least in American media. They do all this stuff talking about God. So I thought it was nice, at least, to try to have in there. Now, he seems to have mellowed a bit since we last saw him at ODST. Maybe it's because he's getting older, but he is still committed to getting the job done. And he even banters with Locke about who gets the drinks when they finish the mission. I feel more from Locke and Buck here than either of the other two characters in Vale and Tanaka, as not only do they seem to get along, they also have respect amongst each other as warriors. And since all they talk about in the rest of this mission is just small talk, I can't really get attached to the other two. They aren't unlikable, but I can't find much reason for me to like them yet. It's not... One of the things I will say here is this game kind of feels like Gears of War to me. They were trying to go for that vibe of the four-man fire team, where you had all this witty banter and good characterization for these characters while you played as one of them. And as you progress through the game, not only do you find out more about them, when they talk, they aren't insufferable, and they actually, feel like characters. They feel like real people. But I'm not really getting that much from Vale and Tanaka. And it's really unfortunate. I don't know if this was intentional, but Vale and Tanaka don't really get much in this mission at all to really set them up. And they just feel like the Halo 1 to 3 Marines without the charisma or good writing to make them memorable, while being used as cannon fodder or support depending on how you play Halo. And considering the better character moments come with Locke and Buck for Osiris, it makes me wonder if Osiris should have just been a two-man fire team. But that would also kind of conflict with the co-op aspect of the gameplay, since, 4-player co-op for the campaign, oh my god. So mark that as major disappointment number 1 for this game, and we'll have a lot more disappointment for us to get into later. Trust me on this. Oh boy. disappointment will be coming. After the banter, Fireteam jumps out of the Pelican and into the battle below between the Covenant and the Prometheans. Now this cutscene at first glance is kind of fucking sweet, and it helps demonstrate some of the abilities you have as a member of Osiris and Blue Team, like ground pounding and the jump jets, and showing the Spartans' legendary speed as they run down the mountain. But like the TLJ throne room scene, it's got a few problems in context and execution. For one, why drop into the middle of the battle like that, and above the side of a mountain, while the Covenant Promethean vehicles and cruisers litter the sky and some are falling down and causing avalanches around you? In fact, why are there even ground troops of both sides of this mountain anyway? Are they asking for death? And while the demonstration of the new abilities and the Spartans running as fast as possible down the mountain while killing a few stragglers is pretty cool, there's some unnecessary stuff done with Vale. She is the one complaint I have in terms of how the Spartans are utilized in this cutscene. So she jumps into a phantom, jumps on a jackal, doesn't kill the one next to it, grabs the elite directly in front of her, kicks the other elite, smacks one of the other jackals and shoots another one, while letting go of the elite she was holding on to, diving under said elite as it slowly tries to swipe at her with its sword, grabs the other elite that hadn't fired his weapon at all, and shoots it dead, and jumps back out of the phantom. What the fuck is that? There are several instances in this where she could have been in trouble, much less killed. And you're telling me the elite, some of the fastest and most brutal enemies in Halo, wouldn't handle her like she's the biggest threat as she is? Elites are big, but they aren't slow. They're fast and strong, and in the fall of Reach, even the Master Chief, despite all of his augmentation and training, has trouble fighting one in hand-to-hand combat and nearly dies in the battle above Reach. That one sword elite had a perfect window to kill her. All he had to do was thrust his energy sword forward, and he'd stab her in the chest plate. And another thing, why did Vale even get onto this thing in the first place? Just to show off? I know, ooh, it's a fancy cutscene, but I'd love some logic in this situation, please. Now, while I do compare it to the TLJ throne room scene, despite it being contrived and illogical for them to drop where they did, and Vale showing off, most of the choreography is okay enough that this scene actually outweighs the throne room fight by a pretty big margin. At least they aren't making swords disappear. They're just, you know, the Covenant are incompetent. Why? And so the cutscene ends with Osiris jumping off a mountain and onto top of a couple of elites, wrecking them like a boss before a phantom lands on top of the rest of the Covenant in that area. Kinda over the top, but a decent way to end the scene. So now we start playing as Locke and Osiris. Or if you had an internet connection and 4 friends, play as anyone in Osiris. The graphics in this game are pretty gorgeous for the environment you play in, and fighting 2 enemies at once that are also fighting each other is a very good way to keep us as the players invested in the gameplay. Not really much happens in terms of the plot as this mission progresses, though they do discuss the ongoing fight between Jewel and Dama's forces and the Prometheans. Locke calls him an opportunist, which if you played Spartan Ops isn't actually true, but we'll get to that. We'll get to that when we get to that scene later, and how Halsey lost her arm in between games. A new gameplay gimmick is introduced in the form of the Artemis, which is a replacement for the nav point system that helps you find hidden secrets, switches to help you progress through the level, and the jump jets can also be used to burst through obstacles to help you find secret fast or to continue through a level. We are also introduced to a new Promethean enemy type, the Soldiers, which replaced the Knights as the Forerunner elite equivalent. What happened to the Knights? Well, they got turned into tanky mini-bosses. Yes, for better and for worse. Making the Knights tougher is actually a good idea, and it really does help the gameplay difficulties. Even on normal, they can actually take you out pretty effectively. But they are very hard to kill unless you have Forerunner weapons, like near impossible. New spike grenades can kill them in 1 or 2 blasts if they don't teleport away. The shotgun can take them out pretty quickly, as well as the suppressor and the light rifle if you shoot them right. But the human weapons? Borderline fucking useless unless it's a rocket launcher or a high-powered weapon. Covenant weapons are marginally better to take them out. Also, the suppressor and the bolt shot have been changed to have seeker rounds, and the bolt shot now shoots in bursts. The light rifle also has less ammo and is semi-automatic, having more resemblance to the carbine and the DMR instead of the battle rifle like it originally was, which is a very big gripe. At least they're balanced well within the game itself, but since the human weapons either run out of ammo too quickly or you don't have ways to get ammo for them in most of these missions, just like you did in Halo 4 for the most part, you're going to be relying on the Forerunner weapons for at least half the game, depending on how you play. And with the Covenant weapons being there to fill the void where you can't use either of them in a couple of missions later on, which is just great. Totally don't have a problem with that at all. I really have a problem with it, and I will get to that after a certain point. So after getting through the last group of Prometheans, the next cutscene starts. Osiris prepares to take out the elites surrounding Halsey, that includes the big fish, Jewel. Jewel is anxious about the security of their situation as Halsey was toying with something Forerunner. While they get into position, Halsey is clearly stalling to give Osiris time to get to her, while also discussing a her in this situation, and how this location they went to isn't enough to triangulate position for something. By the way, I'm not even going to beat around the bush. It's fucking Cortana. It's obviously fucking Cortana. I mean, who else would it fucking be? Why else would Halsey team up with Jewel in any capacity if it wasn't for Cortana? Arguably her greatest creation, but once again, we'll get to that. As Jewel chastises her for chasing shadows, Buck snipes an elite and starts the short skirmish that lasts for about 39 seconds. Yeah, I'm not kidding. Less than a minute. Against the guard of the actual Didax hand himself, Jewel Mdama. Oh wow, I'm so fucking impressed of how skillfully you just took him down so quickly. Yeah, this fight scene is absolutely fucking retarded. Absolutely retarded. For one thing, other than that establishing shot as the cutscene starts, you can't even tell how many of them are even there in the first place. And even in that shot, I can't even tell for a decent bit of it. And as the fighting starts, Locke just straight up runs past a couple of elites that don't even chase after them. Takes on two more as he gets close to Jewel, and it's so close to Jewel that all Jewel has to do is lunge and he's on top of him. Vale does more of her showing off bullshit. She jumps on one of the elites like you would with one of your buddies in multiplayer. Shoots him a few times while the elite moves super slowly even though he shouldn't even be hurt. And he looks hurt. Stumbling into Vale, she effortlessly chunks him off the ledge to his death. Joel decides to finally get off his ass and yells, "Kill them!" with like three guys, when like three of his guys have already died and are dying like flies. Locke then turns around and notices, oh, there's a big bad elite general right behind me. I better end this now. While two elites behind him do fuck all. I can't even tell what the hell they're doing when it goes to that shot of him looking at Jewel and Halsey. Locke then uses his speed boost and starts cutting up and stabbing Jewel like Riddick did one of those creatures in Pitch Black until he dies. Yeah, Jewel just stumbles around and fucks about as he gets wrecked in less than 10 seconds. Despite all we know about the elites and their physical attributes, almost every single elite in these cutscenes are treated as big, slow cannon fodder. And Jewel is given the good old Supreme Leader Snoke treatment and killed in a flat-out embarrassing way. What the fuck? What the fuck is this shit? The rest of Osiris then easily wrecks what was like, the last 3 or 4 elites remaining, and then Jewel finally hits the ground dead. I think I've already explained enough why this fight is pretty shit, so I'll just spare the rest of the details, but I do want to go into detail on why killing Jewel like this in the beginning of the game is not only stupid, but is actually a decent case for character assassination. Jewel Mdama's whole thing with the UNSC and the Covenant is that he was kidnapped and tortured and experimented on by Oni, and he also lost his children when the Arbiter's forces killed them in battle. He's motivated first and foremost by revenge. Considering that Jewel's forces later in the game attack St. Helios en masse, why is he not there preparing for an assault on the Arbiter? Why is he here in bumblefuck nowhere with Halsey? I know she's important to his plans, but this wasn't a task he really needed to be there for, considering the offensive about to take place. Making him a secondary antagonist would actually help us give more perspective into the new Covenant, and flesh out why Jewel hates the Arbiter so much. Why exactly did the Prometheans turn on him, too? It doesn't have anything to do with what is revealed later in the game, so what the hell happened here? Why did the Prometheans turn on him? And last but not least, why the hell did he just allow himself to be killed like this? This is supposed to be the baddest dude in the galaxy. I expected a lot more of a fight out of him. Instead, he dies and becomes a mere afterthought, which hurts if you did like him in Spartan Ops. I'm really sorry for those of you who did like him. He got royally fucked over. This is one of the big reasons I think this game is super rushed, as you could easily put Jewel in this game for far longer than basically cameo appearances and actually treat the character with some fucking dignity. But this pales in comparison to Ryan Johnson. Brian Reed's version of this story. This is why you don't give control of the story of one of the biggest gaming franchises ever to someone who gives no fuck about continuity. Wonderful job, Microsoft and 343. Jesus. And now we finally get to Osiris finding Dr. Catherine Halsey. She just goes, "Finally, you fuckers got here," and the scene ends. Huh? Okay. Kind of wanted a bit more of interaction between our new main characters and arguably the most important person in the galaxy, but we gotta get the plot moving along. No fucks are given. Now, Dr. Halsey hasn't been in a mainline story of a Halo game since Reach, and was previously serving a lengthy time in prison for her involvement in the Spartan program before being called to the Infinity and Spartan Ops. She wanted any closure from that plot and how she and Palmer would be getting along. Don't bother. They absolutely do nothing with this and don't even address that beef. Spartan Ops, once again, treated as an afterthought by the guy who wrote it. Now, Halsey's contribution to the story thus far isn't very well known yet, as the story, as pathetically as the game tries to hide it, hasn't been really revealed that she's looking for Cortana. But I do want to address the pointless opening. Do you think I forgot that one? No, we need to talk about that opening before we go on. It shows Halsey preparing Cortana for something what I would assume to be is her departure in Halo Reach, but without Noble Team. And it's not in that big thing, you know, where it has the Forerunner stuff, you know, the slip space thing. If you ever read First Strike, that's where she is. That's what that thing is in Halo Reach, by the way. It's actually something having to do with slip space technology. It's a big part of the plot of that book. I highly suggest you go read it. But yeah, Noble Team's not there. And it is explaining to Locke, for some reason, how Oni views them both as expendable and when given the chance will kill them both. Yeah, this statement makes no fucking sense at all. Considering Halsey is probably the most important mind for AI research ever, and not only that, created the Spartan program that literally saved the universe and was taken from prison to help the Infinity and Spartan Ops. And Locke was already an accomplished agent before he ever became a Spartan, and is considered such a great asset that Oni wanted to be a Spartan. And now that he is a Spartan, is 5 times, 10 times as valuable as he ever was as a normal human. It's just a small tidbit I wanted to go over because it kind of hurts the narrative that was portrayed in the ad campaign, but honestly, this whole scene could have been cut and the game wouldn't have changed at all. But then again, the scene had member berries, it had the Reach journal, and Miranda Keys' picture. Okay. I mean, as far as we know, or we're supposed to know, is that Halsey knows what's going on, though. That's all we're supposed to know in the story so far. That's it. We then transition to the Infinity as Osiris arrives with Halsey, Lasky, and Palmer Randy. Halsey storms to Lasky as she had sent her messages weeks ago warning them what was going on, and that she should have been there fast enough. Wait a minute. I just found a plot hole. I found a very big plot hole. First off, there's not much that Lasky could do of anything, considering he's still under the command of FleetCom and the UNSC brass, and he'd have to wait for orders. Just because he commands the biggest flagship in the entire UNSC fleet doesn't mean he can go wherever the fuck he wants to. Also, I thought Lasky said that it was in a 3-day period that the colony attacks were happening, meaning that Halsey must have recently contacted the UNSC, based on what we have in the first scene of the game, to tell them that she knew what the hell was going on. Were there other attacks going on beforehand? The game did a pretty shit job at telling us that, if there was the case. Is this game trying to make Lasky stupid? Dude, great job making him boring as fuck instead of keeping him his upbeat attitude and his willingness to do what was right. Lasky then says they'll talk in private and escorts her away for questioning. The mission then ends with Buck asking Locke what was up, only for Locke to say nothing as the screen fades to black. Quote that, man. Hey dude, I asked you a question. I mean, I'm staring right at you. You're not even looking at me. Aren't we supposed to be friends? Why aren't you talking to me? Fine, whatever dude, fuck you. Oof. Once again, the game is hiding what should be critical exposition for the story. That is one of the biggest crimes in this first mission. Instead of us following Halsey and Lasky as she explains what she knows, they don't even bother showing it. I think we'd all like to know what is causing the colonies to disappear. Shouldn't that be a priority one, considering humanity at the end of the Human Covenant War wasn't exactly doing so hot in terms of population? Why the fuck isn't this being treated like super seriously? Oh, I know, it's to hide the twist in the next mission. From Osiris' perspective, this was just a regular mission. That's really dumb. Why would this be treated as a regular mission? You'd have colonies disappearing, millions of people dying. This should be priority one. Why isn't this treated as priority one? And I would have also liked to have more character interaction from Osiris as they discuss the possibilities of what would be causing this. Maybe have a scene where they're getting out of their armor and they're talking. It's like a locker room scene. They're just talking about what's going on, their thoughts on the situation, and would give us more insight to what's going on. You think that would work, right? But once again, the lack of exposition when the story really needs it to move forward not only keeps us in the dark for that twist, but it also kills the potential that the story has in terms of the characterization of Osiris. So far, Vale and Tanaka still have nothing really going for them. And at least we know Vale speaks Sangheili thanks to some of the small talk in the mission, but that's it. Tanaka feels borderline useless. I don't know anything about her yet. All I know is, oh, she's there. She might as well have been our handler. She might as well have been, like in Republic Commando, she might as well have just been the Clone Commando advisor. Something like that. And even then, the advisor was pretty cool. He wasn't being a jerk, wasn't being an asshole, wasn't being stupid. You know, like I said earlier, this game doesn't do a good enough job fleshing anyone out. The only characters that we really get attached to from other games and works in the Halo universe. And they already killed one of them in an embarrassing and pathetic way. Well, we can at least hope the first chief level can get us somewhere, right? Right?